Hi, and welcome to the School Health Educators podcast, where we discuss health education and how to best teach health ed in the K through 12 setting. Hi, welcome to the School Health Educators podcast. I'm your host, Lori Reichel, and today's episode is focusing on this educator who I got connected with through Facebook. And I'm going to actually have two episodes with this person. His name is Kevin Mason. And how I reached out to him, or why I reached out to him, is because he was posting this wonderful information about a unit focusing on analyzing influences. And if you know anything about me, you know that I love hearing about people's ideas when they talk about skill based health education. So before I ask any questions of Kevin regarding more detail about who he is and this unit, which is going to be part two, it's going to be a second recording.
Sure.
Kevin, would you like to say hi to our audience?
Hi, how's it going?
It's going great. It's going great. Can I ask where you're from?
Yes, so I'm actually born and raised in Rhode Island, just about 10, 15 minutes south of Providence. So I'm an East Coaster. But I live out in Denver, Colorado now.
Denver, Colorado.
Mhm.
Okay, and would you tell me a little bit about your background and how you became this person who likes to talk about skill-based health ed?
Yeah, absolutely. So I originally went to school in Indianapolis. So I graduated high school. I went to school in Indiana, University of Indianapolis. I played football there. Originally went in kind of with the idea to do nursing, and then that didn't really pan out with like the football schedule and everything. And so I switched to education. I come from a family of educators. I'm one of six kids, and my mom's a teacher, and four of the other ones are teachers. So lots of education conversation at the dinner table. Um, so yeah, I went to school, got my master's in health and PE there, and then I actually had a really cool experience where I went down to New Zealand and
Wow,
I did my student teaching at a basically middle school in Auckland, New Zealand. Um, had a really amazing time there, learned a lot culturally, like how they kind of weave things in to their education system there. Um, and from there, as soon as I came back from New Zealand, I actually moved straight to Denver. About a couple months after I came back, I had never even been here before. And I've just been here for 6 years now. Loving it.
wonderful.
Yeah.
And I already sense for this episode, we're going to have a conversation. So this episode is going to be about you, some of your experiences, and then we're going to jump into analyzing influences for episode two, which will be released typically 2 weeks after the initial episode. So
Okay.
thanks so much for being here today.
Absolutely.
Kevin, would you mind sharing with us what do you perceive is like the best part, or what are the best parts of being a health educator?
Uh, this one I kind of had trouble with because there's so many. So I guess I should backtrack a little bit. Is when I first came in, I was a K-8 health and PE teacher, but like 80% of it was PE at that level. So for 3 years I did that, and then I was actually a dean of students for a year. And now I'm like actually a full-time middle school health educator. So it's really only year two for me. I consider myself a brand new teacher. So yeah, I think one thing I've learned over those couple years is just like the content we teach is just so meaningful to kids, and it's so easy. Like they have like a genuine curiosity for everything we talk about for the most part. And it's just like the purpose that you feel every day talking about these things with kids, especially at the middle school level, I feel like is my wheelhouse because you're kind of introducing them to a lot of the topics since we don't have health classes really at the elementary levels here. So I personally enjoy that like first the first bite for them, and really getting them like involved in their health and like what's actually going on in their lives and introducing them to the skills. And yeah, I just love it. It's really fun too, coming from a PE background as well. It's easy to kind of loop in games and everything and activities to the content, which I'm sort of toying around with this year a little bit differently. But yeah, teaching about all the different skills can be so fun. So yeah, really enjoy it.
And what grades are in your middle school? Is it 5 through 8, 6 through 8?
It's 6-8. Yep, 6-8. And we see sixth graders for one quarter on like a wheel. And then we see seventh and eighth graders one more time on another wheel. So
Excellent. So your district really supports health education, although it's not a whole year, at least they're having some exposure during the sixth, seventh, and eighth grade.
yes, yep, absolutely.
And can you see those differences between sixth, seventh, and eighth? Like they're at different spots in their lives?
Yes, and I think that's like my learning experience this year. How I'm teaching things this year is completely different than what I did last year in my first year. And I think the more I've challenged them this year and have like much more meaningful assessments, I'm able to see like the huge kind of skill gaps sometimes, even between seventh grade and eighth grade, sixth grade to eighth grade. They're kind of all over the map. So it's really cool. And that's kind of the fun of being a teacher, is like getting that assessment and trying to be creative to get them where they should be. So yeah, it's fun.
Do you have any best moments or favorite moments so far? Like anything stand out without saying people's names?
Yeah. I mean, especially in middle school, it is just like, there's never a dull moment. So it's really fun. You get the crazy days, you get the really fun days. I'm also one of the football coaches at the school. I also run a like a boys group. I don't know if you've heard from Christopher Pepper before. He shares a lot on like men's groups in schools and everything. So I'm running a group that's after the next gen men out of Canada. So like I'm trying to get students involved in a bunch of different ways. And I think just those relationships you build through those like things outside the classroom, kids coming in at lunchtime, confiding in you with stuff. And that's my best memories, is just kind of connecting with them as people. Yeah.
I think middle school was my favorite to teach. Like I like all the grades, but middle school, there's just something about they can be goofy 1 year or even in the morning and they get serious and there's this moodiness aspect. And I enjoy their personalities. I enjoy
Yeah.
being a resource for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, I'm only in my second year of like a just 6-8 school. But it's so funny how um like it's so easy to see tendencies and like where kids are going. As soon as they walk in your room, you know exactly where they're at most of the time.
Yeah.
And it's almost easier in a way to be like, hey, I can tell you're not doing okay right now.
Aw.
Yeah, so I love middle school. I think that's where the heart is.
Well, I need to ask about you learning about skill based in health education, that skill based approach, because not everybody knows it. Like, I know I personally was trained in more content, like you give a
Yeah.
lot of information. And the thought behind that was upon providing updated information to young people, they would then use that information to make the best decisions, to
Mhm.
make, to plan well, have daily habits and lifelong habits and stuff.
Mhm.
Yet we know that doesn't happen. So in New York State, we had the guidance document that really focused on skill based health education. And
Mhm.
that I've been doing for over 20 years in my career. So I feel so blessed to have that experience in New York. But in other places of the world, if I say just the United States too, it's like people don't know about the skill
Yeah.
based approach. Like, how did you learn about the skill based approach?
Yeah, and I think to go off that, one thing I've found is like even when you're trying to explain to people like what you teach And when you say you're a health ed teacher, it's like much harder for them to grasp like the actual skills you're teaching versus like, oh, you're not just teaching them like about STDs and STIs and drugs and alcohol and stuff. And it's like, yeah, we do, but that's not the main focus.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, I man, I had one heck of a year last year just trying to make sense of skills-based health ed. And I'm not gonna lie, it was tough at first. Trying to figure out how to I mean, my introduction to it was Holly Alperin's book,
Oh, and
the
Sarah
lesson
Bennis,
planning.
those
Yes, and
books.
Sarah Bennis'
Hmm.
book. Yep, lesson planning for skills-based health ed. That was my introduction to it, and that really helped me wrap my head around skills-based as just like a concept in general. Um, and there's just so much information out there, thankfully, for health ed teachers like Christopher Pepper. I already mentioned him. I use his stuff all the time. He has a great website. Andy Milne's website,
Hmm.
Scott Todnam's website, the Facebook group that I met you in, the Health Teacher Central one, Twitter, like all of these different things. It can get overwhelming. Like sometimes you can have just information overload. Um,
Hmm.
but from all that, last year at the beginning of the year, I actually switched, like kind of like I shifted my thinking with how I was going to teach it at the beginning of last year, like when I first came in, and I was like losing my mind. I was like, oh my gosh, how am I making sense of it? Because to be completely honest, I didn't get skills-based health ed like teacher training when I was in college.
Okay.
So that it was a lot of self-learning last year, lots of finding resources. But that was really my introduction to it, and I've kind of tried running with it a little more this year. And I was actually lucky enough to get the Send a Teacher grant to the Shape America conference last year up in
Very
Seattle.
good.
So met tons of people up there. Again, shifted my thinking even more. Um, so yeah, it was a very long road, and we're still not there yet, but we're definitely improving.
If you are a student or a former student of mine listening in, and you're hearing Kevin talk about skill based, you see, I'm not making this stuff up. We have the textbooks because we do use those textbooks at SUNY Cortland about the skill based, and we use other resources also. Yet Shape America, as well as other national organizations, are attempting to update health educators to be skill based.
Mhm.
And it is a paradigm shift. Actually, the first time I went through it, I was like, like I cried. But a part of that was, so I had that friction to make that shift of, wait, this is really what I'm trying to do. It's
Mhm.
not about me telling you what to think. It's about you figuring out how to think best for yourself, to
Mhm.
analyze, like that unit we're going to talk about in the next episode. It's about helping kids figure out, hey, I might be influenced here. So they can go like to the movies and then come back and go, Mr. Mason, I didn't realize all the things that they showed me in the movie, that they're trying to convince me about some things, perhaps.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't like that. I'm like, yeah, but that's part of life. And you have to be aware and analyze and stuff
Yeah.
like that.
And you got to know what to do with that information.
Before we started recording, you had mentioned that you listened or watched a previous episode with Diana Laufenberg, who's
Mhm.
a big person pushing the making your kids to think movement for sure.
Mhm.
And you had said that's what you attempt to do. What is your experience with attempting to get kids to think?
Oh man. Yeah, so we were discussing that, and Diane was saying that like it can be used as like a classroom management type tool, where like if kids are if basically like if the main focus in their brain is actually thinking about the content, then that in itself will help solve some classroom management stuff. While I completely agree with it now, I think at the beginning of my class this year, when I was rolling out a lot more of like the new questioning strategies, she mentioned Project Zero as well, out of Harvard, which I like try to use a lot of those strategies. Um, we call it conferring at my school. That's just the language we use that I'm working with as my professional goal. And it's really just trying to find ways to push kids thinking instead of you doing the thinking for them. And I was just mentioning that it was a struggle at first. And kids, unfortunately, and we have an amazing school, and this is like, conferring is something that we're kind of pushing across our school, which is excellent. And I was just going to add though that like kids do get so used to like, here's the information, I'm an empty bucket, let's fill it up as much as we can, get assessed on it, whatever doesn't hit, oh well. Um, and I am again having that brain shift of like continuing to loop back to things, and like shifting my units so that it's easier to have conversations over the long term instead of just trying to pile it all in at once. And it was definitely a rocky start. It was not easy. It was I, I remember I had a student the other day. I absolutely love him to death, and he basically was sitting next to one of his friends, and his friend asked me a question, and he told his friend, he's like, no, 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 don't ask him, he's gonna just ask you another question. And he was joking around, but at the same time it's like they almost like, you really have to show them the value in pushing their thinking, and like why when they leave the classroom they're going to need those thinking skills way more than just general like memorization of the topics. So yeah, definitely a rocky start. We're in a much better position now just because like we've built that motivation up inside them, and we've really pushed through like kind of the challenges of like a new way of working in class, and it's going pretty well now.
Excellent. Excellent. It's funny. I know my students have figured out that if they ask me a question, I'll often ask, well, what do you think about that?
Yeah.
Anybody want to answer this? What do you think? And some of my students, even when I taught in K through 12 or at the undergrad grad level,
Mm,
like for more of a content, not a methodology course, but something that I can infuse a lot of the skills in there or
mhm.
have it based on a skill, I should say.
Yeah.
A lot of students have told me in the past that they walk out of the classroom thinking more than they started, like walking into the classroom. And they're like, I'm not used to thinking that much. I'm not, you always make me think. And I'm like, yes.
Wow, I'm tired.
I know. Well, before we end our first episode together, Kevin, would you mind sharing any advice that you have for current or future teachers in the health education field?
Yeah, mine's just super basic. Like I said, I consider myself a second year teacher. I'm really in my sixth year, but second year is health ed and just truly in the learning phases. And I would just to teachers in similar positions, I'd say just embrace the kind of just the rocky start of trying things, and just it's so rewarding teaching skills-based health ed, and like it's so rewarding doing like using those conferring strategies with students. And just like Diane said, like once you try that method, it's impossible to go back to what
Yeah,
you've done before. So push through kind of those tough times, and like you will come out the other end, and try it again the next quarter, try it again the next semester. But it's really worthwhile. So I guess just keep kind of pushing through when you're trying the right thing and it gets tough.
wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah.
And if somebody wants to get in touch with you, how do they do that?
Yeah, so I'm on Twitter. Well, I'm on Facebook where we met. I'm Kevin Patrick on there on the Health Teacher Central. Twitter, my I had to look it up. My handle is Mr. Mason Health. No like punctuation or anything in there, just MR Mason Health. And then my email as well. We can throw in the notes if you'd like to. More than happy to talk about anything. And I also put a lot of my stuff up on Teachers Pay Teachers. I'm not in any way like, I'm more than happy to share it without people buying it and stuff. So, but either way, yep, everything's kind of up there, and I can share all that as well.
Wonderful.
Mhm,
Well, thank you again so much for partaking in this part, our first part of two episodes.
mhm.
And to our listeners out there, we thank you so much for listening in. Please remember to follow this podcast on your favorite podcast platform. It should be available on the majority of them. If it's not, connect with me and I'll make sure it gets on there. And also check out the schoolhealtheducators.org website that was put together to create an area for people to go to for skill-based health education, as well as links to get updated for the functional health knowledge. There's also information about the WISC model on there. And remember, you make a difference. You matter. Thanks for doing what you're doing and stay well, folks.